What's up, y'all? Bill McNeil rocking the mic again, cold representing Rocket Fuel Malt Liquor. It's got the mad flavor that takes any situation to the next level. So when the party starts bouncing and the ladies start bumping, tighten up your flow with Rocket Fuel. Rocket Fuel Malt Liquor. Damn!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's been a hot and heavy news week and controversy week for DC Comics, but Marvel's there too. They've got a few nuggets of information that they've been trickling out as far as some of their future programming within their publishing line. Now, DC's solicitations are out in full. You will see my full solicitations video on that Sunday morning, first thing. It doesn't appear that Marvel's quite ready for that, so I would expect that one actually next week. But we do have some nuggets of information to talk about. One that I think might be controversial, and I might be in the minority that I don't really have an issue with Elektra being the woman without fear. I actually kind of predicted this as far as what is going to happen with Daredevil moving forward. We've also got information on the return of Mar-Vell, sort of, in a Silver Surfer comic from Ron Marz and Ron Lim. And we also have information on how Marvel Comics is celebrating Luke Cage's 50th anniversary as a major character. And let me just let you in on the details. It's very disappointing. It's like they're not celebrating at all. And I'll get into those details. For all of you Luke Cage fans, spoilers. You're in for a world of disappointment if you thought Marvel was going to do much of anything as far as Luke Cage. Now let's get into the news. The first big topic is Marvel's Devil's Reign, the big Daredevil crossover that Chip Zdarsky is going to be writing with Marco Cicchetto on art, that I'm actually quite... I'm in a lot of anticipation for this one, is now going to include a crossover series called Daredevil, the Woman Without Fear, obviously playing on the iconic name of a Daredevil miniseries or storyline from back in the day. This is going to be a 3-issue limited series from writer Chip Zdarsky, who's obviously also writing Devil's Raid, with artist Rafael De Latorre, which will reveal Elektra's darkest secret to Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, and the primary villain within Devil's Raid, the big crossover event that should be going on that this is connecting to. This is what Mr. Zdarsky himself said to comicbook.com. And I do want to point out, that's a pen name. Watch out, Chip. You might need to use your real name. You got to get in trouble. This is what he had to say to comicbook.com. When we were planning out Devil's Reign, it became apparent early on that Elektra's story was too big to be contained in the main series. Wilson Fisk has unearthed her darkest secret, and I'm super excited for readers to see the fallout in this series. What could her darkest secret be? It could be many things. It could be something that we have no idea about. It could be the fact that Elektra and Stick are sort of using Matt right now, and she is pretending to be Daredevil to gain Matt's trust in order to essentially get him murdered. That's what it appeared that Elektra and Stick were planning, because they need to have a king and queen to resurrect this other ancient organization that will be the Death of the Hand. If you remember that was introduced maybe a year ago. Perhaps that's her deepest, darkest secret. Maybe it'll be something else. Perhaps she has another blind lover on another continent. It could be something as dark as that. Now, as far as Elektra's Daredevil, I personally don't have an issue with it. I think if you were going to replace Matt Murdock as Daredevil with another pre-existing character within the Marvel Universe that has a similar skill set that is kind of within the Daredevil universe, Elektra obviously is the character of choice. They have a lot of similar skills and training and whatnot. They certainly have a lot of shared history with the Hand and other characters. And I personally have not had a problem really with the Elektra portion of Daredevil since she's taken up the mantle. I think it's actually been pretty good. There's certainly been a lot of character growth, and you can definitely see the seeds have been planted that perhaps Elektra is changing her mind on Matt's mission and exactly what he does while he's out there as Daredevil, and perhaps that being a hero is a little bit more noble than she's given him credit for in the past. What I personally had an issue with is the Matt Murdock story, because he's just been sitting in prison acting like a moron for quite some time now. You know, he makes a deal with the police to infiltrate and kind of get the the governor of the prison. What do they call it? Oh, the warden. They know the warden's dirty. He's going to infiltrate him, and they're going to let him off for helping out and turning state's evidence. Oh, I'll do it, but you can't let me out of prison early. And he's almost been murdered a couple times. Like, why would you want to stay in prison? He's also had his white privilege checked by his prison, like, counselor, therapist, whatever you want to call her. I didn't think that worked out very well. So the Matt Murdock in prison story, other than the King in Black tie-in, where he becomes possessed essentially by a demon when the symbiote takes him over, and he quickly exercises himself using an electric chair, which I thought was an amazing moment. Really like that issue. Otherwise, Matt Murdock in prison has been a complete waste. And, it's too bad. They should have just done the Elektra stuff and been like, yeah, Matt's still in prison. It would have been a more exciting series. Obviously, you still have to show Matt. I don't think Zdarsky has quite paid that story off very well. It's quite clear that he's kind of concentrated on Elektra as the new Daredevil. And like I said, I have no problems with Elektra as Daredevil. Kind of makes sense if you think about the character and the character skills. Now, Marvel is also promising the Woman Without Fear will set up the next part of Elektra's story as Daredevil. And the fact that the title invokes the Man Without Fear story may indicate some level of tie-in to maybe like the 90s story, obviously, that where you had the Man Without Fear. I don't think that's what they're doing. Obviously, within Marvel Comics, they're borrowing a lot of classic names, and they don't have anything to do with really the story that's being told. Heroes Reborn had nothing to do with Heroes Reborn. It had everything to do with Age of Apocalypse. That stupid Phoenix Force tournament was pretty ridiculous. I don't think that had a lot to do with like Dark Phoenix, stuff like that. Inferno doesn't feel like it has much to do with X-Men Inferno, kind of stuff like that. I think they're just using the name because it's nostalgic and people recognize it. Although it does go on in this solicitation when we get those out next week to say that the Woman Without Fear will be facing like the Marvel Universe's greatest hunter. Obviously, that is some type of indication that Kraven the Hunter, who we know is dead, should return, but there is a clone of him out there that survived the hunted story arc from Nick Spencer when he was still on Spider-Man. I guess at this point, I'm invested in the character, and I personally have liked Elektra as Daredevil, so I will be reading The Woman Without Fear because I'm definitely going to be reading Devil's Reign anyway. So I'm all on board on this one. I can see how other people would have a disagreement on that and maybe turned off to the idea of The Woman Without Fear, but I do want to say I called it. I said we're definitely getting The Woman Without Fear, and there's a good possibility that once Devil's Reign is over, we're going to be getting Daredevils, where maybe her and Matt Murdock are co-Daredevils, or you will get her as the Daredevil and Matt Murdock's dead. It's one of those two. We ain't getting Matt Murdock as the Daredevil, at least not solo in the near future. But there's a good chance he'll be dead at the end of that end of that event. Moving on to the return or the resurrection of Mar-Vell. And this is going to be in a Silver Surfer series called Silver Surfer Rebirth, which certainly has a lot of ties to DC Comics. I don't know why they're using that title, but hey, I guess they'll use anything nostalgically, even if it's borrowing from DC. But the Silver Surfer is returning in 2022 for a limited series. And the Marvel Comics are bringing in a pair of creators that are certainly familiar with the character, Ron Marz and Ron Lim. Me personally, I'm not going to read this, although I'm quite intrigued by the solicitation and all the information that we have. It actually sounds quite exciting. And I always try to separate art from artist, but Ron Marz is one of those creators, those artistes that pushes the boundaries so far that eventually you just got to say, I'm out. I've witnessed you disparage customers and talk so much crap that it's not even funny anymore. Now, if you are one of the lucky ones, if you have not witnessed Ron Marz's behavior towards customers, whether it be on social media, well, mostly on social media, and you can still stomach the guy, I think that you're going to like the series because it sounds quite entertaining, and it sounds like actually a pretty good yarn to spit. And they are obviously Ron Lim and Ron Marz are the team behind Silver Surfer from the 90s, which was absolutely fantastic. If you still stomach Ron Marz at the time. So Silver Surfer Rebirth will be jumping back into the 90s era that they were already writing before to tell an in-continuity story about a mysterious individual stealing the reality gem and using it to, among other things, bring back the dead hero Captain Mar-Vell back to life. Obviously, Mar-Vell himself. Mar-Vell is one of the very few comic book deaths that seems to be permanent. That, and I guess Gwen Stacy, although we've had Gwen Stacy return, but she's from an alternate universe. The Gwen Stacy in the 616 is still dead, and Mar-Vell in the 616 is still dead as well. But we will be seeing the real Captain Mar-Vell, at least in Marvel Comics. We're not seeing the return of Billy Batson Captain Marvel. That's a DC Comics. But as far as Marvel Comics, Mar-Vell is returning. And I can see that a lot of people will be very interested in this. When I saw the cover, I was a lot more excited than when I actually read what they were going to be doing with the character. I thought he was really going to be returning, which is odd. Like I said, it's one of the few deaths that's actually remained. So, are you excited about the return of Mar-Vell, even as some type of reality gem ghost that's being manipulated by some unknown mysterious villain at the time? Now, the real kicker is who Silver Surfer will be teaming with to track down this mysterious individual and fight off Mar-Vell that is returned from the reality gem. And it's going to be none other than Thanos is going to be teaming with Silver Surfer to track this down. Obviously, Thanos has had a long-standing interest and connection with the Infinity Stones. It makes sense to have the character in there, and I think that is quite the interesting premise, personally. Silver Surfer, Thanos on a quest to get the reality gem from a mysterious wielder that is controlling Mar-Vell. Unfortunately, it's a Ron Mars comic. If you heard that strange noise, I thought that was potentially my 4-month-old baby crying, but it turned out there were 2 cats outside of my house having a scrap. I mean, scrap, they were fighting. So it happens sometimes. It doesn't happen all that often when I'm recording, but there you go. That's what that noise was. Apparently, they've squashed the beef, and they're good friends again. Now, getting into the Ron Mars statement about the Silver Surfer Rebirth comic, he said, "Turns out you can go home again. Silver Surfer with Ron Lim was literally my first job in comics. The first comic page I ever wrote was drawn by Ron when we were both kids. And now 3 decades later, we get to go back there and slip right back into the same groove. It's so great to be wielding the power cosmic again." Ron Lim himself also had a statement. He said, "I am so thrilled to be penciling Silver Surfer Rebirth. When Darren Shan, our editor, asked if I'd be interested in working on this with Ron Mars, I jumped at the chance. It is fantastic to be working with Ron again. It has been quite a while since we worked together, but it feels like hardly a day has passed. I'm having a blast getting to draw many of my favorite characters from our run. The story is full of surprises, familiar characters, and crazy cosmic action. I can't wait for readers to check out the book. Hope they enjoy it as much as I enjoyed drawing it." So there you go. This continues a trend that we've been seeing within Marvel Comics. Obviously, you do have the X-Men Legend series that has seen a lot of creators from X-Men past come back and tell in-continuity stories from like the 90s and whatnot to continue on stories, fill in a few gaps. We've also had the Peter David series that he's been doing, the Symbiote Spider-Man, which I believe is on its 4th miniseries, right? I think Symbiote Spider-Man 4th Crossroads is the number 4 series on that one. We also had Ben Reilly's Spider-Man, which has also been Peter David as well. So they've been going back and touching on these things, these past characters, events. And me personally, I'm all in favor of it, except for this one, just because Ron Mars is involved. Like I said, I don't like the guy, and I literally have no respect for him as a human being. So I'm not going to read the book. But if you have not encountered Ron Mars, I think you're probably going to like this one because it actually sounds pretty good. Now getting to the worst news, I guess, of all of this, it's Marvel Comics plans for Luke Cage's 50th anniversary. Luke Cage is one of the more important characters in Marvel Comics history. He's the first African-American superhero to lead his own book. To actually star title in it, and all that stuff. Luke Cage, when he was Luke Cage Hero for Hire #1 in June 1972, broke some glass ceilings, was a landmark issue and something that should be celebrated. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised. It's Marvel Comics that they would drop the ball like this with a character that's whose place in history is so important. So what they've decided to do, they haven't even taken 3 important Luke Cage issues and put them into one of those books they've been putting out where they charge like $6 or $7, where you get like some really important key issues of a character. They're not doing reprints. True Believers, they're not doing those. They're just publishing the comic book that they had already planned on publishing from Ho-Che Anderson, which is Luke Cage City of Fire. Nothing for Luke Cage himself, and what's the worst part is that thing's actually tying into that Devil's Reign event. So this series in itself was never about Luke Cage. It's a tie into a big Daredevil event. And certainly Luke Cage has ties to Daredevil in New York and all that stuff. But for them to do nothing, literally nothing to celebrate the character in his place in history is quite disappointing, but firmly expected. I'm not surprised by this at all. So they're claiming that Luke Cage City of Fire #1, which doesn't even come out in 2022, it actually comes out in 2021, is the celebration of Luke Cage's 50th anniversary. And obviously that'll be followed up by issue #2 in January 2022. Like I said, it is a tie-in to the Devil's Reign event, which pits Kingpin against Daredevil and other vigilantes that stand against him. Luke Cage will be protecting his city against a group of crooked cops calling themselves the Regulators, who are out to terrorize his neighborhood at the order of Kingpin. It's going to be a 3-issue series from Ho-Che Anderson. That's the celebration that they're doing, at least initially, for Luke Cage's 50th anniversary. Hopefully, when we get to June of 2022, they'll do something a little bit more impressive to celebrate the character. Otherwise, that's a major league disappointment. But that's a lot of what DC and Marvel are these days, at least in my book. I hope you're enjoying both publishers more than I am. Me personally, I'm looking forward to Daredevil One Without Fear. I know some people are going to disagree with me, and that's just fine. We can agree to disagree on these things. I would read Silver Surfer Rebirth if Ron Mars wasn't attached to it. And then, I'm not going to read Luke Cage City of Fire because I have a hankering suspicion that is going to be an absolute dumpster fire. I don't know who Ho-Che Anderson is. I don't imagine that they're ever going to be a big deal in comic books. And they can write their bad comic all they want. And this is no skin off my back. I ain't got no time for that stuff. So that's your Marvel news. Definitely check out the Comics Aficionados live tomorrow. We got a great panel. We'll be talking about all the controversy that came out this week. We'll be talking about the John Kitt Superman stuff. We'll be talking about the beef between David Michelinie, Eric Larson, and Todd McFarlane about the creation of Venom. We'll be talking about what are the most played out storylines in comic books. I got a list. Let me see if I can find my list. We'll be talking about the Stephen DeKnight versus C.B. Cebulski thing and a few other topics. Should be fun. We're going to have, obviously, Nerdy Girl Creates. We'll have Fatal J and Yul Carter with us. So it should be a lot of fun. Definitely check that out. And I got some saucy stuff coming. I wish I could tell you what Gervain and I are going to be doing next week. I think you guys are going to be interested in that one. And that one's going to be a big video. Trust me. I'll see you then. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.